This is Bob Oliphant from the Westford Historical Society and Museum, bringing you episode 22 of the Westford Wardsman podcast. The Westford Wardsman newspaper was part of Turner's Public Spirit, a weekly newspaper in Ayer a century ago. In this episode, we'll be reading the Westford Wardsman for the week ending Saturday, May 30th, 1908. And I will add context as we read along to elaborate on what was happening in Westford 113 years ago. The May 30th issue begins with the Westford Center section. Last Saturday afternoon, in the perfect beauty of the spring day, the remains of the late Mrs. Augusta Butterfield, which had been entombed in the cemetery at Ayer, were brought to Westford for burial at Fairview. The Honorable George J. Burns, who happened to be born in Westford in 1855 as James George Burns, and family were present, as well as a number of former Westford friends. Reverend L.E. Perry of Ayer made the prayer, and Reverend C.P. Marshall read the scriptures, after which eulogistic remarks were made by Mr. Perry, and Mr. Marshall read the committal service. Mr. Burns, in whose family Mrs. Butterfield had lived for many years, added words of appreciative memory of the deceased. The funeral of the late Mrs. Sarah E. Drew took place at the family home last week Friday afternoon at 2 o'clock and was largely attended by relatives, friends, and neighbors, come to pay their last respects to one who had lived her life faithfully and well. The floral offerings were numerous and of great beauty. Reverend C.P. Marshall, in the absence of Reverend B.H. Bailey, was the officiating clergyman. You might remember that Mr. Marshall was the pastor at the Union Congregational Church and Reverend Bailey at the First Parish Church Unitarian in Westford Center. The bearers were Augustus Bunch, John Burbeck, Wayland Balch, and Henry Burbeck. Burial was in the family lot at Fairview. George W. Haywood, one of our aged townsmen, has been quite ill the past week. Mrs. Alfred Hartford underwent an operation for appendicitis at her home on Sunday morning. It was performed by Dr. O.V. Wells, assisted by Dr. Sleeper and Sherman. At this writing, Mrs. Hartford is doing nicely, and her many friends unite in wishing firmer health for her than has been her portion for some time past. Imagine having an appendicitis operation at your home. Doctors Wells, Sleeper, and Sherman were all Westford physicians. I was curious as to how old Mrs. Hartford was and found that she was 30 years old when she had that surgery. Mrs. Clarence A. Reed, who has been so seriously ill with pneumonia, is reported as gaining a little each day. The new four-room school adjoining the academy lot will be open for inspection on Memorial Day. This building is a model of its kind and a credit to the contractor and the building committee, who faithfully perform their duties. Doubtless many people will avail themselves of this opportunity so thoughtfully accorded. This school is, of course, the William E. Frost School, and the academy was in what is now the Rodenbush Community Center building. The next section is entitled Party. Mrs. J. Herbert Fletcher was a genuinely successful hostess to a large party of friends at her pleasant home on the Boston Road last week Thursday afternoon. Entertainment took the form of progressive whist, of which there were 12 tables. So that's 48 people. Whist was an early form of bridge, what we call bridge. Mrs. Fletcher's sister, Miss Ella Gill of Ludlow, Vermont, who has been spending the winter here and who has so pleasantly identified herself with the social and literary life of the village, ably assisted her sister in entertaining her guests. Mrs. Elliot F. Humiston won first prize, which was a beautiful hand-wrought handkerchief, and the second prize, a handsome pack of cards, was won by Mrs. C. L. Hildreth. The rooms were tastily decorated with beautiful spring flowers. Refreshments of ice cream and cake were served. Mr. Fletcher, not at all overwhelmed at being the only man at a ladies' party, and with characteristic geniality, appeared toward the close of the gathering and greeted his wife's guests and assisted in dispensing refreshments. The next section is called Contest. The medal contest at Town Hall last week, Friday evening, was of excellent merit and a credit to the young people who took part and to those having the affair in charge. Miss Maud Sargent was awarded first prize and Miss Gertrude A. Hamlin second. Following is the program. Piano solo, Albert Day. Prayer, Reverend C.P. Marshall. Recitation, When the Sabbath Bells Were Ringing, Anna Sims. Mandolin solo, Arthur Garland. Recitation, Two Glasses, Ida Trask. Song, John S. Grieg. Recitation, Who Struck the Blow, Sadie McMaster. Song, Good Night, Male Quartet. Recitation, License to Sell, Addie L. Day. Mandolin solo, Arthur Garland. Recitation, Prohibition Battle Call, Gertrude A. Hamlin. Song, Miss Flagg. Recitation, One Standard for Both Sexes, Maud Sargent. Song, Leon Holland. Dialogue, A Point on Prohibition. Music, Grange Orchestra. Remarks, C.P. Marshall. This was a time period when graduates of Westford Academy were required to write a paper or an essay, and these were then read at the graduation as part of the graduation exercises. And I believe that's what this medal contest was, perhaps a preview to the graduation exercises or part of the exercises. The next section is the About Town section. Union memorial services were held at the Unitarian Church last Sunday. Owing to the illness of Reverend Bailey, pastor of the church, Reverend Charles P. Marshall conducted the religious exercises and preached an exceptionally patriotic and appropriate sermon for the occasion. The veterans were escorted from the town hall to the church by the Sons of Veterans. The church was appropriately decorated with flags and flowers. The singing by the United Choirs was finally rendered under the direction of Edwin Barnes, supervisor of music in the public schools. An added little attraction of the music was the cornet playing of Alex McPherson of Roxbury, who also effectively played taps at the close of the exercises. These union services were not called union services because of the union soldiers that were present, but because it was a union service between three different churches in town, and this was, at this time period, was held every Memorial Day, Sunday. The churches were the First Parish Church Unitarian and the Union Congregational Church in Westford Center and the Methodist Episcopal Church at Graniteville. Each church served as host every third year. The Committee on Enlarging the Forge Village Schoolhouse met at the office of the Abbott Company Tuesday afternoon to organize. Julian A. Cameron was elected chairman and William Taylor secretary. This William Taylor is the other son of Sam Taylor and brother of John Taylor. John Grieg is the last arrival to come into camp with the measles. Death is the next section. John M. Chandler died at his home in Tingsboro last Sunday, aged 84 years, 8 months, and 5 days. Mr. Chandler was born in Westford on the farm near Flushing Pond and was one of the large family of William Chandler. This family lived on the farm located due north of Flushing Pond on Tingsboro Road, where it makes that big S-turn. In 1849, John Chandler went to California and mined in the gold fields for 3 years. So he was one of the 49ers. It would be interesting to talk to him, I bet. He is survived by 3 children, John Frank of Tingsboro, Harry A. of Billerica, and Mrs. Emma M. Wright of Graniteville. The funeral was held at his residence on Wednesday. Reverend Dr. R.A. Green of Grace Universalist Church conducted the services. Mrs. Clara Grieg and Mrs. Charles Wright sang effectively Sometime We'll Understand and The Homeland, 2 favorite selections of the deceased. The bearers were J. E. Woods, Horace E. Gould, George J. Sherburne, and Otis L. Wright. Burial was in Hillside Cemetery, Westford. Hillside Cemetery is the one on Nutting Road and Depot Street. The next section is called Baseball. The largest crowd of the season gathered at Stony Brook Park last Saturday afternoon to witness the ball game between the Westford and Littleton teams, this being the second game between the teams this season. As the Westford team won the first game by a score of 1-0, it was expected the Littleton team would make a lively dash to win, but the Westford team have a degree of trained skill that cannot be crippled by a dash, which was clearly proven as the game progressed, and finally rounding up by beating the Littletons 5-1. This forenoon at 9 o'clock, the Westfords are going to try something harder and will meet the team from Nashua, which have a reputation for winning. They are likely to have that reputation reversed by contact with the home team. Obviously written by a Westford baseball fan. The special town meeting Monday evening was largely attended for the season and an evening session. The meeting was called to order by the town clerk, Edward Fisher, who read the warrant and called for a nomination for moderator. The Honorable H.E. Fletcher was nominated and elected. The second article was to hear the report of the Committee on Enlarging Forge Village Schoolhouse. A.R. Schote, as chairman of the committee, reported and submitted plans to the meeting and figures of contractors, the lowest figures being $6,400, which does not include the sanitary work. This will make a 4-room building of modern style and convenience, to complete which the committee felt they must ask the town for $8,000. The report of the committee was accepted. A motion to accept the report was questioned by Captain Sherman H. Fletcher, who felt that it might bind the town to the one plan submitted. The motion was withdrawn. Article 3, to see if the town will appropriate or borrow money necessary to enlarge the Forge Village Schoolhouse. A.R. Schote submitted a motion in writing which in effect authorized the town treasurer to borrow $8,000 to be paid in notes of $1,000 each annually, interest not to exceed 5%. The motion was carried after the Finance Committee, by its chairman, O.R. Spaulding, reported in favor of said sum, the vote standing 44-11. George T. Day then made a motion that the building committee, consisting of 5 persons, be appointed by the moderator with full power to act, such committee not to incur any indebtedness in excess of $8,000. The motion was carried, and the moderator appointed as a building committee Julian A. Cameron, Albert R. Schote, John Spinner, William R. Taylor, and Leonard W. Wheeler. Article 4, in regard to adopting the law preventing setting fires in the open air from April 1st to October 1st, was unanimously adopted. Article 5, relating to preventing using the highway for dumping stones, brush, refuse, and other waste material, or piling wood and lumber, called out much discussion. Frank C. Wright wanted to know if the town, in repairing roads, would be governed by this rule. At present, they rake the stones and refuse from the roads to the sides of the road, making as unsightly an appearance as the private citizen that this vote is trying to prevent. Finally, Selectman Abbott submitted a written motion which in effect is prohibitive except by permission of the selectmen. Articles 6 and 7 relating to discontinuing old and unused roads were passed without opposition. The next section is the Graniteville Section. Miss Judith Matson of this village, who is at the tuberculosis sanatorium in Rutland, has had an attack of pneumonia recently. The latest reports are that she is up and about in her room. Her general condition is much better, and she is improving rapidly. Mrs. Thomas E. Fisher of Lowell has been a recent visitor here. Mr. Fisher is a teacher at Lowell High School, I believe, and a native of Westford. Mrs. Alfred W. Hartford of Westford Center, who underwent an operation for appendicitis at her home last Sunday, is now improving slowly, and her many friends in this village, where she formerly resided, are wishing for her speedy recovery. The new hose wagon for the Albert R. Schott Hose Company has arrived here and will be put to practical test in the near future. J.H. Payne, president of the Stony Brook Beef Company, reports business improving and everything points to a very successful season. I believe this is the only reference I've ever seen to the Stony Brook Beef Company. P. Henry Harrington, the well-known contractor. It seems like every time P. Henry Harrington is mentioned, it's followed by the phrase, the well-known contractor, which he certainly was in Westford 100 years ago. P. Henry Harrington has recently returned from Springfield, where he was a delegate to the Grand Court Convention of the Foresters of America. Mr. Harrington represented Court Graniteville of this village. The next section is called New Schoolhouses. Several of the voters from this village attended the special town meeting in Westford Town Hall Monday night, the principal business being to raise and appropriate $8,000 for the remodeling and building of 2 additional rooms to the Forge Village Schoolhouse. This sum includes sanitation, heating, and plumbing. The question was favorably voted on without much discussion, and a committee was appointed to attend to this matter as soon as possible, so the necessary changes will be made before the opening of the fall term. When this building is completed, Westford can boast of having some of the best-equipped schools of any similar-sized town in the state. This applies to both interior finish and outward appearance of the building. A.R. Schott, chairman of the school board, has informed the writer that the new school building in Westford Center, which is now completed, will be open all day Saturday, Memorial Day, in order to give those who wish ample opportunity to inspect the building and see what a fine place the children will have at the opening of the fall term. And, in fact, in the future, for this building is a substantial one and is built for the coming needs of the town. And the last section is the Forge Village section. The Forge Village Lions journeyed to Groton Saturday and won from the Groton team by a score of 2-1 in a very enjoyable game. The same club held a social dance in Abbott's Hall last week, Friday evening. All enjoyed the evening. Miss Precious at the piano and Brown violin furnished the music. Miss Hazel Comey had a very ill turn at school Tuesday. Dr. Blaney was hastily summoned, and it was some time before she got relief. A heart trouble seems to be the cause. She is much better at time of writing. That's the news at Westford for the week ending May 30th, 1908. Thank you for listening, and thanks to Nick Woodbury of Westford Cat for providing technical support. You can find transcriptions from the Westford Wardsman at the Westford Historical Society's website at museum.westford.org, or visit the Historical Society's Facebook page for more Westford news from a century ago. This is Bob Oliphant, and I hope you will join us for next week's Westford Wardsman podcast. Thank you.